So here's what I want you to start thinking about as we engage upon this seminar today. This is a quote from Maya Angelou. I just want you to read that through and see if that doesn't resonate with you. Does that resonate? Mm-hmm. So when we think about this, when we're dealing with our customers, we want them to have an experience where they feel great. They may forget what the situation was. They may forget exactly what was done to make them happy. But if they remember that it was a good experience, you're going to have what we call an advocate. And we're going to talk about advocates today because I think, you know, the city is a great place. It's a great place to live. It's a great place to do recreation. It's a great place for everything. We want everybody to be an advocate for the city and for the people that work here as well. We want them to have a great experience. So what I want you to think about is forgetting the idea of this customer service. We all know what customer service is. I want everybody to start thinking about creating a customer experience. And we'll define what a customer experience is. It's a bit different from just the idea of customer service. Who here has experienced bad customer service? Right. And we've all experienced good customer service. We'll be talking a little bit about that and how do we turn those great customer service experiences into a total customer experience, okay? So here's what we'll be covering today. We'll be covering what is customer service and experiences. We're going to talk a lot about empathy, attitude, and caring. Because if you have those three things when you're working with anybody in any type of relationship that you have, we create what we call a win-win. It may not always be the outcome that someone wants, but we can create a win-win experience. Communication, how we go about it, and then as Tom mentioned, what are some of the things that we want to take away from today's training that you can then implement as you go forward, okay? So before we get into all the details, we're here, I know it's mandatory, right? So we're stuck here with each other for 2 hours. Hopefully we'll have some fun along the way, as I mentioned. But what would you like to get out of today's session? If you're walking out of here today at 12 o'clock, what would you like to walk away with? And feel free to be funny. So I'll mention this too. So I also, in my other side gig, I'm an adjunct professor at a college, so I'm very comfortable with silence.
I would say just, yeah, I'll start.
Please, thank you.
An overall teamwork attitude of everyone kind of being on the same page.
Good, thank you. Anything else? One done. By the way.
That's right. Oh my gosh.
And the prizes only get better from there.
How about how to communicate with your customers?
Communicate with customers. Thank you, Al. And then patience.
Patience.
How do you be patient when you're working with
Patient
customers?
with customers, public.
Can I get one more? Yes,
maybe how to diffuse or sort of close out when somebody is being not pleasant to us, how to sort of come to a good conclusion.
We call those difficult conversations.
Sure.
And I will take one more.
Oh, I was just going to say, taking pride in who we are, what we do, and how we, present it to people in our community.
These are awesome. Okay, prize time. No, we're back. Because you were last, the best prize.
Oh, that's
right. And I know I'm going to miss somebody. But would you? Yes. Thank you. So thank you for that. And the good news is we're going to cover all those topics. So we're on the same page to start, which is great. Okay. So here's what I want you to think about. This is Steve Jobs. You probably remember him. He was the CEO of Apple. Does everybody remember that Steve Jobs actually got fired from Apple and then got rehired and took the company to new heights? When he introduced the iPod, if you can imagine, the iPod, that's like centuries ago at this point. When he introduced the iPod, what he says was it wasn't just a new device. It was, if you remember, if you look at his jeans, you remember that the jeans had that little short pocket there that was useless, right? What he said was you could put your iPod in there and then you'd have 1,000 songs in your pocket. So he changed the way he described music and the way we experience it. And I think what we want to do today is try to look at the way we engage with our customers in a different way to create the experience so that we are all on the same page, that we have communicate well with them, that we have patience when we deal with them, because not every interaction is going to be great. We close out difficult conversations in the best win-win manner possible, and then we take pride in what we do. So that's a great agenda we have all right there. So what I'd like to do now is just to get you guys thinking, okay? I want you to think about an incredible customer experience you've had. And I want you to think about how did it make you feel? What about it made it so right? And then lastly, are you doing that for your customers when you're interacting with them? Is there something that you can take from that experience that you had that you can maybe implement yourselves? So I have the sheet there in front of you, and I think everybody hopefully has a pen. And on the top there, you're going to see creating the good experience there. So if you wouldn't mind just taking a minute to write down a couple thoughts on that, and then we'll regroup. So just think about a great customer experience that you've had, and a couple of notes. Does anybody need a pen? Great. Okay, who wants to share their awesome customer experience? Just a little bit about it. Yes, please.
Transferring an elderly parent through Chicago O'Hare Airport.
Oh, goodness.
That's a great one. Okay, can you tell us a little bit about it?
My wife and I were heading on the West Coast. We were dropping her 92-plus-year-old father off in Chicago to go to his son's house. Chicago's a big place. My father-in-law's footsteps are 10 inches. We had a very good experience with United Airlines taking ownership of the transferring process, as we were extremely time limited to go from one terminal, 3/4 of a mile, to another terminal in a timely fashion, and be comfortable that he'd be able to get on the plane because he's a little forgetful.
So they took that, the situation you were in, took ownership of it,
An
and
individual took ownership of it.
how was the interaction with that individual?
It's great.
Positive person?
Absolutely positive.
Yep.
Very reassuring to a person who was very nervous, out of his comfort zone.
And how does that make you feel about United?
A little bit better because my brother works for a different airline.
That's great. Thank you so much. Anybody else have a customer experience that they had that they'd want to share? Please.
So I was staying at a national hotel chain at a suite, and had booked it because it had just been renovated outside the Boston area, and pointed out to the desk clerk that the desk chair was missing a wheel, and right behind the desk in the suite was a coffee table that was set up for a safety hazard. And I was actually not looking for anything in return, but was contacted by the regional manager. Thankful for that, provided not only comp to my stay, but gave me 3 additional stays in the future for pointing that out to them.
So what did that make you feel like?
That they valued what I valued.
And did you feel important to them?
Surprisingly, yes, because I was just providing information. I wasn't looking for any real feedback. But
How about one more? Yes, please.
One Saturday, I have 3 little kids. So one Saturday we decided to go to a restaurant and have lunch. We went there, we were asked if we had preference on where to sit. He was honest and said, I have kids. I don't want to sit in front when everybody will be moving the kids
Right.
moving around. So a corner would be great. This lady said, you are good. You are not the only one. Everybody loves kids. And when kids move around, it's all fine. It's not about you, it's not about kids. Kids are kids, and they should be kids. That was reassuring. She actually ended up giving us a corner because I had requested it, but it was really reassuring that someone understands what I was trying to express.
Thank you, that's awesome. So you felt, again, understood and reassured. So we've all experienced great customer service or customer experiences, right? But we've also probably had some bad customer experiences as well. So we might want to think about that for a second. So now I'm going to take you and flip your mind for a second. And here's the thing. When people have great customer experiences, rarely do they share those, right? Have you heard this before? But when people have terrible customer experience, it's like 10 times the amount of noise as opposed to a good customer experience. So just think for a second about something that went wrong in a customer experience for you. And take a couple notes on that, and then we'll regroup on that, and then we'll move on. In the meantime, I'll iron that post-it for us. Give another minute or so. And Meredith, is this your first time?
Well, technically Monday will be.
Okay, all right, but here you are.
Yes.
So, welcome. Okay, so can someone share a customer experience that they did that did not go very well, please?
Well, this is with United Airlines. True story. Years ago, my husband and I and our daughter, we went down to St. John's, the U.S. Virgin Islands. First time we'd ever been down there. Life, you know, just an experience that was just kind of a lifetime experience. Well, anyway, our luggage got lost. Well, we were camping down there, and we did not have our luggage. We kept asking, what happened, what happened? We didn't have our luggage. We were there for 10 days. We didn't have the luggage for 8 of the 10 days. So we had to borrow other people's clothing for, you know, from in the campground. Well, we kept asking and asking, and really, we were getting nowhere. And then they offered us, for the 3 of us, $150 to be able to buy clothing down there. And it was like, holy smokes. And But what happened is we turned it around. When we got back, I was so angry. And I thought, well, let's calm down and have it a teaching, learning experience. So I ended up writing a letter to to United Airlines, just expressing our major disappointment of how the whole trip went. And actually, it turned into a positive because they ended up giving us free airline tickets for the next year. So it ended up being positive, but it took a heck of a lot of work. And so instead of just deciding, you felt helpless, and here you are in a place where it's like, well, what are we supposed to do? And we decided as a family to try to make a positive out of a negative. So anyway.
Thank you, that's helpful. So what could they have done to make that right for you? Let's just say that for whatever reason they couldn't find your luggage for 8 days. It sounds like the communication wasn't very good. You kept having to follow up. Could they have done anything differently to make your experience better?
Well, of course, they,
Yep.
they could have, one, said, hey, we'll take care of, communication on where our stuff was, because when they did leave it, they left it on the dock at St. John's, and they didn't even tell us when it finally came in, and we had to go and get it. So it was just the lack of communication. They could have at least told us, hey, it's on its way, we'll make sure that you have clothing, go to this place to be able to get a bathing suit and some shorts or whatever. It was just the whole thing of lack of communication really stressed us all out, and they just could have made it a lot better that way.
Thanks again for sharing that. I think one of the lessons in that story is that if you can take care of something sooner rather than later, it always makes people feel better about it. Sometimes you can't make things happen sooner rather than later, and the thing that you can do about that is communicate about that. Sometimes you don't have the answer. Sometimes you don't have whatever solution it is that someone wants. But if you communicate expectations around that, it will make that person feel better. It will make them feel valued. So it really does get to communication. Can we have one more terrible customer experience story? Please.
I may not be the only one. Vermont Health Connect. I actually have post-traumatic stress. It's diagnosed, believe it or not, from Vermont Health Connect. So in a 6-month period, trying to get my husband and us, and me and my girls enrolled, I was insulted and demeaned. I was ignored, brushed off, and ultimately lied to. And it took 6 months, and we finally did receive health coverage, but at that point, I'll assure you, we all needed it, listening to me carry on for 6 months. And it made me feel powerless. And honestly, when I get up in the morning and I'm headed wherever I'm going to work, what I carry with me is, please God, don't let me be Vermont Health Connect. Treat people better. And that's they're a terrible warning, and as long as I don't feel like I handle with Vermont Health Connect, I've done that.
Bar's pretty low on that one.
Really low, and I try to be better than that, but that's
Of course,
for the bars.
of course. And I'm reasonably familiar with Vermont Health Connect and some of the struggles they had, and some of us do technology and et cetera, et cetera. But it sounds like the experience that you had was not just around this technology, but it was around the interactions that you were having with the people that you were dealing with. Knowing that there still were some problems there, could they have handled it differently for you to feel better about that?
Absolutely, and some of it was what the people on the phone were allowed to say, because we qualified for subsidies, which is what I was calling. And one of the gentlemen that I spoke with said, and I'm quoting, "Wow, it really sucks to be poor. Tell me something I don't know."
Right.
And so it was just comments like that, okay, well, we're all agreed, I agree with you, but I'm here because I'm forced to be here, and I already don't feel great about having to be here, and now you've just piled on. And I think it would have just been more respectful attitude from the people that did have to share tough information and did have to share tough answers, and they couldn't make the program work faster, but they could have been more empathetic.
I was just going to piggyback, so thanks again for sharing that. I was going to piggyback on that to say, empathy goes so far. If people feel understood and valued for what they're saying, they'll start buying into whatever you're trying to come up with as a solution for them. They'll be in it with you. So doing something like that is obviously the last thing that we want to do. Value your customers, show them empathy, understand their situation, put yourself in their shoes, because that will help. So again, thanks for sharing that information. So we know what this looks like, right? It's not a secret to us. The question is then, how can we go about it so that we can create the greatest customer experiences possible at the city? And I know that you all have different roles here. Some folks are in rec, some folks are in the field, so there are different interactions that you have in the course of a day here at the city. So how can you take those interactions and make them as positive as possible? Because some, might be very, very difficult, but there's still a way that you can approach it that tries to get to the best possible outcome. So I wanted to share a story about a great customer experience that I had. It always has to do with airports, doesn't it, or airlines. So I was doing a speaking gig out in Arizona, and I was getting a meal at the airport, and it was a Mexican restaurant, and this fellow that I had for a server was really, really good, sort of like the experience you had, very empathetic, understood what I wanted, got me my meal quickly, recognized that I was sort of in a rush. And at the end of the meal, I asked him, I said, would you mind giving me a glass of water so that I can take it on the plane with me? And he says, oh, geez, I'm so sorry. We have a weird rule in Arizona where we're not allowed to give drinks to go because we have a liquor license. And I know it's not alcohol, but it's just the way we run here. And he sits there for a second and he goes, hold on a second. And we're in the terminal, right? So he leaves the restaurant out of the terminal, walks across the terminal to a fast food place. I see him talk with somebody behind the counter. Then he goes behind the counter. I see him grab a cup. He fills it up, closes up, walks back across the terminal, puts it down on my table. He says, there you go. And I said, you're the best. And he goes, I'm a Marine. And he was a Marine, okay? So he literally was a Marine. He happened to be a server as well. So what is, when we think about people in the armed services, what do they have to do? They have to figure out a way to get the job done. So there was a barrier in front of him that was preventing me from having this unbelievable customer experience. He figured out a way to go that extra mile to make me have an even better customer experience, and I'm here to recommend that Mexican restaurant in the Phoenix airport the next time you're there, okay? And ask for the Marine. So let's talk about what a customer experience actually is, okay? So I'm gonna read this through. It is the sum totality of how customers engage with your organization and brand, not just in a snapshot in time, but throughout the entire arc of being a customer. Customer service is everyone's job. We're all in customer service, regardless of our roles. Because each time someone touches the city in some fashion, they're having an experience. And I've worked with the city for a very, very long time, and think about the evolution that this building has undergone from an experience standpoint. How much more welcoming it is now. The experience that someone has walking into this building now is much, much different than it was 10 years ago, right? And I was hearing the stories about this room, in fact. So new windows in here which have lighted it up and makes the experience of being in here. So think about it from a taxpayer's perspective when they're coming in for a meeting. Much more welcoming and engaging environment, right? So each one of you has the opportunity to create a great customer experience for someone that works in the city and lives in the city. So think about that. Always, there's an arc to a customer. If someone lives here their whole lives, they have a number of touch points that they're going to have with the city. Wouldn't it be great for every one of those touch points to be an unbelievably great experience? Because guess what? They're going to be a complete advocate for the city. So when the city needs something, guess who's probably going to be on board as that advocate, right? It's a relationship. It's a relationship. I'll tell you another quick story, back to the airlines. So I'm a huge fan of Southwest. Has anybody ever flown Southwest before? A few of you, okay? Southwest is a different airline, okay? They have a different seating arrangement where you have to line up like cattle, okay? And you have to get your A, B, and C. And my favorite is, if you have C, this is what one of the flight attendants said, if you have C, C stands for center, Because it's open seating in Southwest, so when you get on there, you can choose any seat you want, but if you get that C designation, you got the center seat. So try not to get C. Get the early bird check-in. Anyway, point is, I've flown Southwest a lot out of Manchester, New Hampshire. And one time we were going to Florida with my kids, who at the time were 6 and 3. And it was my youngest daughter, Maddie's birthday. She was turning 3 that day. And she was nervous about flying. It was her first time flying. We were going the whole Disney World thing. And so we brought her a present on the plane so that she could open it up and that would be her experience and she would feel more comfortable about it. So the flight attendant comes over and she goes, "Oh my gosh, is it your birthday?" And Maddie, who's a shy kid, still is. She says, "Yes." And the flight attendant says, "Well, how old are you?" And she's 3. She goes, "Well, happy birthday, Maddie." Oh my gosh, that's so nice. Like, this person's taking an extra step to make my daughter feel comfortable. So it was great. And then, shortly thereafter, I hear over the loudspeaker, "Shh, ladies and gentlemen, we have a very important person on board. Her name is Maddie, and she is 3 years old today. Let's sing her happy birthday." The whole plane then sings happy birthday to my daughter. You thought I've got an advocate, right? And then after that, they come over and give both of my kids the snacks to hand out to everybody. So they go up and down the aisle and hand out the snacks to everybody. Like, it's still like, it's an emotional impact to me as that person. Because they went above and beyond what they had to do to make that experience great for us. Now, I was on another flight that was going from Phoenix to Las Vegas, and someone else was having a birthday on that flight, and we sang her happy birthday, but it was a much different experience because she was turning 21 and going to Vegas. But Southwest, they sort of know how to do that, and one of the things that it's an interesting company if you ever want to sort of explore them. Their whole philosophy is around their culture being fun, innovative, and expressive with their customers to make them feel as friendly and warm as they possibly can. So I wanted to just take a step back and think about what in business for a second, because I think it does have an impact on how we all interact with our customers. And this is a tale of two Watsons. So on the left there is Thomas J. Watson, the original president and CEO of IBM. And on the right is his namesake. And can anybody tell me who that Watson is?
Deep blue, big blue, something blue.
Computer. Does this ring any bells?
Yeah.
So here's Watson, Thomas J. Watson's namesake, and here is Watson competing against the top 2 Jeopardy champions of all time. Does anybody remember who won? Watson. Watson won. So Watson won. Watson is artificial intelligence, okay? So what Watson tells us is that now computers can process information as complicated as humans are more quickly. So what has that done for all of us? Well, think about, we all have our phones now. Think about how much our worlds have sped up and our expectations have changed because of the immediacy of everything. And so let's talk about the speed of life for a second. Over the past 2 years, IBM's researchers have shrunk Watson from the size of a master bedroom to a pizza box-sized server that can fit in any data center, and they improved its processing speed by 240%. So after Watson beat the 2 Jeopardy champions, it got 240% faster. So our speed of life has just gone so quickly, and we as humans are, which is a separate seminar by the way, but we as humans are trying to keep up with that, and we're having a hard time with it. But what it has done is it has changed our expectations. Anybody ever use Amazon Prime here? I want to just one-click everything in my life now, right? We one-click and it's done, it's delivered, it has all that, it makes it easy. So now think about that from a customer's perspective. Amazon may have that, but maybe some other companies aren't doing that. They're behind because now the expectations of our customers have changed in terms of how they interact. And then I want to ask you what's happened to these guys?
They're on the way out.
Anybody know what a Nigerian businessman and princess reference is? Can you tell us, Brett?
That's where all I've got to do is send them a social security number, and a lot of riches come my way.
Like 7 million.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Did you do it? No.
Am I here?
Yeah. So yeah, so if you remember years ago, this email was coming out from a Nigerian businessman and princess asking for Social Security for and we kind of got it. We're like, okay, no, delete out of that. But now think about some of the phishing scams that you might get. We had one at our office where there was an email that looked like it came from our IT director to us, telling us to give them information because we were locked out, so they wanted our passwords. So again, things have evolved very, very quickly. And then the other piece of this is, as we know, we're all in customer service. Customers are people who need our assistance. We want to be able to help them. They wouldn't be asking us to do something if they didn't need something. So our job is to serve. We are in the service business, regardless of our role within the organization. And we have to remember that they're not an interruption to our jobs, they're the reason that we have jobs. I don't care what organization you're in, whether it's a municipality, a for-profit business, a nonprofit business, we are here to serve. We have different roles within the organization, but we are still here to serve. So they're the reasons that we have our jobs, and that's the mindset we have to have when we're talking about creating really, really good customer experiences. I also want to talk a little bit about, it's like a really fancy word here, information asymmetry. What this essentially means is the idea that in the old days, think about buying a car, right? So some of us are old enough to remember before the internet. And then, so how would we go about buying a car? Well, we were at such a disadvantage from a buyer's perspective because we had a lack of information. We would try to get the Kelley Blue Book that we had to get from the bookstore or the local, convenience store, pull that thing out, and if it was dated, we were out of luck, right? But that was the best information that we could get. And then we would try to go into the dealership. We couldn't really compare dealerships unless we wanted to drive from South Burlington over to Albany down to Nashua. But now think about how that has changed. The power has been put back into the buyer's or customer's hands because there is so much information made available to us. So now when we go into the dealership, we are armed with information, aren't we? And then we're coming from a position of power compared to the seller. So what does that mean for you folks? Well, what that means is people are able to gather information. Think about all the information that's on the city's website. There's a ton of information that people can go through, whether it's the minutes or public notices or whatever it might be, that information is out there. So people are more informed than ever. What do people need help with? Navigating all this information and helping them get to a spot where they get what they need. Because the other thing from a buyer's perspective, think about this, how much information is out there? So much information that it's hard often to weed through. So oftentimes our role has changed from whether we're in customer service, whatever role we're in, from a place of providing a lot of information to helping people interpret that information. So it's a different type of role. And my example that I always give is I stay at a lot of hotels, and this is one that I'm particularly fond of. And I can go online and I can research whether or not this is a good hotel. It's got 5 stars, it's got ratings, et cetera, et cetera. So think about this from the city standpoint. If people don't have great experiences, they can share those poor experiences. If they have great experiences, they can share those experiences. So wouldn't we want every single touch point that they have within the organization to be a great customer experience? So on this part of the session, I just want to point out that the bar is being raised in terms of what people expect from us in whatever role we are. Customization, people want things customized to them. You know, we can get our iPhone with the pink cover and we can have everything we wanted, the pictures, we can do anything, right? Our lives are much more customizable than they used to be. There's the famous story of Henry Ford, right? He always said that whatever color you wanted in Model T was fine as long as it was black, right? That's the old one there. Well, think about that in our world now. I'm going to talk about my daughter Maddie in a little bit. She's a pretty big basketball player, and so she's way into getting basketball shoes. So what can she do now? She can go online to Nike ID, she can get her name on the back of them, her number, her whole thing, then she can customize the colors in whatever way she wants. And think about that going back to like the 50s when it was sort of like the Chuck E. Tees, right? The Converse Chuck E. Tees. What color do you want? Any one you want except for, but it was only black, right? And that was it. So now, here we are in this world. So there's an immediacy that people want immediate answers. we can't always give immediate answers. We know that, right? There's sometimes things are complicated, they take them time through. But similar to Maggie, her experience, sometimes things take a little bit to run through, but if you're communicating well with them, people will have a better experience, okay? They might expect an immediate answer, but as long as we're getting back to them quickly, they'll get it. The expectations have changed. And then there's this whole millennial thing, right? Millennials have different expectations because they were raised in a different time. And so, you know, my daughter's like, cable? Why would I ever watch cable? I have Netflix, I have everything's online, you know? Record? What's a record? You mean the phone was dialed into the wall? Right? So different experiences. So as new people start entering the city, they're going to have different expectations, and the ways we interact with them are different. And then people are really looking for, you know, transactions that are good and really convenient. Okay, so that's what we have to kind of go through to make sure that this. So here's this idea of advocates that I want to talk about. How many of you own a dog or a pet here? Right, a number of us. So I have an Australian Shepherd named Guinness, and he's a good boy, right? And I think about him, and he's very loyal. He's dedicated to me, right? He would protect me, and if needed, he would advocate for me. So I think about that when we start interacting with our customers. I'm not saying that we want to turn our customers into dogs. I am saying that the idea that we create these advocates where they, if we're doing well by them, they'll create a relationship based on loyalty and trust and the fact that we are looking out for each other's best interests. And that's the kind of experience people want. So think about those great customer experiences that you wrote down in that. We said up there, we feel valued and important and understood and reassured. Wouldn't we want every single person who has whatever interaction with the city to feel that same way? So we want advocates. There's Guinness. So create the loyalty of a dog and you'll have advocates. I'm a good boy. Okay, so now we're going to switch gears for just a second here, and then in about 5 minutes we'll take a quick 5-minute break, but I'm going to require everybody to get back here at 12 or 11. So multitasking. We all sort of think that we're really good at multitasking, and I'm going to put that to the test today. Okay? So here's what I'd like you to do. You have a sheet in front of you there, and it has, I think, multitasking listed on it. And so what I'd like you to do is I would like you to write the letters A through J, and then the letters 1 through 10, and this is going to be the tricky part, Roman numeral letters 1 through 10, in order, okay? And I'm going to give you 60 seconds to do that. And so the goal of this exercise is to see if you can complete everything in 60 seconds, okay? So again, A through J in order, 1 through 10 in order. Don't go until I say go. And then 1 through 10 in Roman numerals, okay? And go. So you get about 27 seconds left. I mean, I can sort of feel the brilliance in this room already, so. He's distracted. All right, 5 seconds. How'd we do? Anybody finish?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
All right. I'm going to challenge you a little bit now, okay? So let's change it up a little bit. So now I want you to go like this. I want you to go A, 1, Roman numeral 1. B, 2, Roman numeral 2. And I'm going to give you 60 seconds to do that as well. And let's see how well we do with that one. Ready? Go. About 26 seconds.
Oh, I heard that pen go down.
Paul's killing it.
Planner.
Okay, about 10 seconds. And pens down. Those who finished? Good, that's actually a good number. Okay, those that were faster the second time around than the first time. No, that's great. Yeah, there's a couple that's good. So what's the point of this exercise? We all know the alphabet. We all know our numbers and Roman numeral numbers. By the way, I had to, in my college class, oftentimes we have to go through Roman numerals, right? That's not something that's really taught very much anymore. The point is, we all know that, but when we try to do things in a different order or we multitask, most of us are not particularly as good as we think we are in multitasking. Some of us are. Some people just have that skill set. But most of us don't have that. So what's the point for this environment? Well, think about that when you're dealing with a customer, whoever that customer may be. If you are trying to write an email and talk with a customer at the same time, first of all, it's probably not good practice. Or look at your phone while you're talking to that customer, also not good practice. You're not giving them your full attention. So one is, they don't feel as valued as they probably should be. And two is, you aren't able to actually hear everything that they're saying and communicate as effectively. So multitasking is not great practice when it comes to interacting with individuals, because people want to know that they're being focused on and feel valued, right? So the moral of the story is, don't multitask, right? As good as we are at it, okay? And I'll leave you with a quick story before our break here. So we all have different personalities, right? And we all have different ways we go about our relationships. And what I would ask of you is to say, do what you do best in developing relationships and work on improving that, rather than saying, hey, you know, I'm not a great, actually, yeah, I'll use myself as an example. I feel like I'm a pretty decent public speaker, okay? Like I'm very comfortable in this environment. Where I get very uncomfortable is if I have to go to some type of networking event or meet with people one-on-one. I get anxiety over that, and I'm not very good at it, to be honest. So what do? I do much more of this type of environment than doing networking environments. So the story here is that back in the 40s, animals were going through a tough time. I don't know if you knew that, but a lot of tumult in the world. And so the animals decided that they were going to create a school, and they were going to have a curriculum. And that curriculum consisted of running, flying, climbing, and swimming. And so every day, all the animals had to go through this curriculum. And there was this duck. And the duck was great at swimming because of its webbed feet. Obviously, it can fly. And climbing was easy because it used to fly right into the trees. So all three there. But the duck was not a good runner. And the duck would have to go on the track every day after school because the principal wanted him to improve his running. And so he ran and ran and ran. And he improved his times very marginally. He was never going to be a very good runner. And what did he do? He ruined his webbed feet so he couldn't swim very well anymore either. So when we start thinking about developing relationships, the idea is do what we do really well and working with our customers and improve on that to develop the best relationships you possibly can. Boom. So it is 5 of right now, so we'll get back right at 11. So if you want to grab water, use the restrooms, grab a quick Danish, we'll do that and we'll restart. Pulse check. So far, so good? Okay. Great. So thank you. So I want your experience to obviously be very good as well. So understanding your customers. So anybody know who that woman is there on the screen? There's a prize in it for her. This is when you can guess. Yes, Marissa Meyer. So that's a prize right there. Wow.
Oh, you get an actual prize.
You get a piece of paper.
Wow,
No,
I
I'm
thought
just
you
It looks like a new iPhone.
It's the iPhone 14. So Marissa Meyer was employee number 9 at Google. She was the first woman engineer at Google. She was also the person who designed Google's homepage, which is, as you probably know, it's pretty basic, and some would say elegant. And what she said about Google's homepage was that she wanted to be like a Swiss Army knife, closed, sleek, elegant, but had all the doodads when you needed it, right? And think about that from a Google's perspective. You can just basically get it whatever you want. And she said that Google's competitors were like a Swiss Army knife opened, with all the doodads out, and made it very intimidating and scary and not useful. So what about Marissa Mayer? Well, she ended up becoming the CEO of Yahoo, which I think just got sold recently. But she also helped develop Google's philosophy around the customer. And they have something that they call 10 things, which you can find on their website. But I just wanted to pull 2 of the 10 things out. And for Google, their 10 things is focus on the user and all else will follow. And you can supplant customer with user there. Focus on the customer and all else will follow. We've talked a little bit about developing relationships and the customer experience. If you focus on them having a great customer experience, all the other good things that you need to have happen will happen. And then secondly, this is number 9 in their 10 things, you can be serious without a suit. And so Google is notorious for having this sort of loose culture with ping pong tables and all that stuff, and I'm not suggesting that the city do anything like that. I think what we can take from this in this environment is that while we all have to be professional in our interactions with our customers, the taxpayers, et cetera, we can still be ourselves as well and allow our personalities to help us develop that relationship so that they have a good experience, okay? So I just want to take a couple of minutes and read through this for a second. So on the first one, since the beginning, we focused on providing, check. Since the beginning, we focused on providing the best user experience possible. Whether we're designing a new internet browser or new tweaks to the look of the homepage, we take great care to ensure that they ultimately serve you rather than our internal goal or bottom line. We're all in customer service. Whatever you all folks are doing here, it's for the benefit of the city and the residents, right? You could be serious without a suit, and I'm not read through all of this, but we put great stock, last line, in our employees, energetic, passionate people from diverse backgrounds with creative approaches to work, play, and life. So again, you have a diverse workforce here, different ages, genders, et cetera, and each of us has our own personality, but you have one common mission, which is to work for the city. You're allowed to laugh, that's a little fun. You work for the city and are helping make the city a better place to live, work, recreate, etc. Let's see if I did that right. If not, I'm going to have Tom come up and just click every single time I need a slide. Tom?
I can.
Thanks. So now I want to tell you a little something else too. You know, there's a lot of talk about innovation in the business world. Like we always have to innovate. Well, sometimes it's just really good to be extraordinary in the box, which means that just do what you do really, really well. And if you do that really well, it will serve the customer really well because you'll be an expert at what you do and be able to create a really good experience for them. So I want to tell you about a. Can I give you a little thing? Maybe look at that and see if you can do that. Putting people to work. So I was in high school. I wore these shoes. I know. And unfortunately, I wanted to wear them again when I was like 40, which is really kind of sad. But I couldn't find them in the town I lived in, which is Plymouth, New Hampshire. Okay, small town. Surprisingly, they didn't have white bucks there. So I was like, oh, I really want a pair of these. I was getting nostalgic, et cetera, et cetera. So where do I go? Anybody have a guess?
eBay, Amazon.
Close. Now owned by Amazon. This is a few years back. Zappos. Zappos, right? I really hadn't had an experience with Zappos before, and it was pretty neat. So I'm on there 4:30, and I ordered my bucks. I found them. I was so psyched, you know. I paid, and they arrived on my doorstep 8:30 the next day in February. And I wore my white bucks in February outside that day and was so happy. And I was like, but what about this company though? How did they get that here so quickly? And so there's the story about Zappos. And the story of Zappos is that they don't do anything extraordinary. They originally sold shoes online. It was a shoe store. But what separated them and why they got sold for $1.3 billion to Google was because of the customer experiences that they created. If we call Zappos right now and ask them for recommendations on restaurants in South Burlington, which has nothing to do with their business, they will help us. They will help us. Anybody, another prize available here. Anybody want to guess the longest customer service call that Zappos has ever had?
Probably short.
4 hours.
11 hours.
Now we're in the range. 7 hours and 46 minutes. Over 2 days. Now you talk about a tough customer, right? But that's what they're built on. And the other interesting thing about Zappos is the way they go about their hiring process is pretty interesting. So, Brett, do you mind if I use you as an example? Okay. So I'm going to hire Brett at Zappos, right? Brett, you're hired. Congratulations.
Thank you.
So I'm going to send you off, and we're going to have a 6-month training program where you are going to learn all about our customer service philosophy and how we create the greatest customer experiences. And all we want to do is create wow. Wow is our bottom line. And after that training experience, you're going to come back and we'll have a quick discussion, okay? Off we send Brett. 6 months later. Brett, how was your training experience?
Long?
Yes. Do you feel like you understand our wow philosophy?
Yes.
Great. Well, here's what I want to offer to you then. Here's $4,000. If you want to leave today, go ahead and take the $4,000. I really appreciate you coming in, and if that's the case, we wish you well. Do you want to stay or go?
I want to stay.
You want to stay. They literally do this through their hiring practice. I don't know if you guys have heard that before. So why do they do that? Well, first of all, turnover is very costly, okay? So it's a little bit of like if somebody doesn't want to stay, let's give them a little bit of short money and get them out the door. But secondly, they also want to know that they are committed to the organization, that they are a cultural fit, that they are going to create that wow experience that they want to do. So it's an interesting way to go about business. And Zappos, by the way, has been wildly successful, right? Has anybody experienced like going through Zappos, right? Free shipping both ways, right? So if things don't fit, you get it back and they send it back to you. So anyway, that's my Zappos experience. So there, how do we do, Andrew? Did we make it?
Give it a try. Yeah.
So Zappos recruiting, business in the front, party in the back. And so their whole philosophy is around creating the best culture that they possibly can so that they can then do business well. And I want to talk a little bit about their core values. So they have 10 things as well for their core values. But look at their number one thing. Deliver wow through service. And that means every single person within the organization in whatever role they have. And these aren't really high-paid positions. They're headquartered out in Las Vegas. I think they just moved recently to somewhere else in Nevada. But their employees are getting paid about $10 to $11 an hour. So it wasn't like they were one of these, Google or Netflix where they're paying people $1 zillion to do work. They're paying people, just above minimum wage, but still creating this great customer experience. So sometimes it's not just about the money; it's about the philosophy and having the right fit. So what do they say about that?
It's working.
Hold on. Everybody, can we get a round of applause for Andrew right here and Paul? Thank you. Very well done. They're multitasking. So let's talk about their deliver wow through service. And I'm going to read a couple of these things. So this is what they put underneath that first value that they have. They say, to wow, you must differentiate yourself, which means doing something a little unconventional and innovative, which means that going above and beyond. And whatever you do must have an emotional impact on the receiver. Go back to that Southwest story that I told you about and the emotional impact that it had on me. Sometimes we're not be able to create this huge emotional experience, but if it's a good experience, people will feel it. Our philosophy at Zappos is to wow with service and experience, not with anything that relates directly to monetary compensation. So it's a different philosophy than a lot of companies have. What they basically say is if we do all of these things well in treating the customer well and having them have great customer experience, everything else will then follow. Money to the bottom line. So you can put that in terms of the city. If you do everything well in treating the customer, everything that the city needs to do will follow. And then finally, we seek to wow our customers, our co-workers, our vendors, our partners, and in the long run, our investors. So we get back to the comment about teamwork and being on the same page. There are internal and external customers. Internal customers could be your teammates, the folks that you're working with on a daily basis, your colleagues. Wow them with service, create an emotional impact with them, have a relationship with them. Because if you do so, you're creating that opportunity to have a win-win environment, okay? When I was graduating from college, this fellow named Lamar Alexander gave our commencement speech. And at the time, he was running for president. And he's from Tennessee. And it was kind of controversial because you have like a political candidate. But he ended up giving this great speech. And he told stories the whole time. He would tell a story and then say, find the good and praise it. And he'd tell another story and said, find the good and praise it. And tell another story and said, find the good and praise it. And I can't remember any of those stories. And I graduated eons ago. But I remember the message that he got across to me, which was find the good and praise it. Which is a great message, by the way. That's not what I want to get across to you. I want to get across to you when you're having interactions with folks in whatever capacity, the more that you can focus on what the message is that you want to get across to them and be really concise with that so that they understand clearly what it is that you're going to do with them, better, okay? So have the message be very clear and concise when you're dealing with folks. We've already talked about this, but be in the business of wins. Not just wins for the customers that you're interacting with, but creating a win-win environment where you're getting your needs met and the customer is getting their needs met. Because if you do that, then that's the whole idea of creating a relationship in whatever form, fashion it is, it will help you deliver better customer service. So I was a baseball player growing up, and I was a pitcher. And I threw the ball pretty hard. And I was also very, very wild. So, which means that I couldn't put the ball over the plate. I couldn't throw strikes, if you will. So I had a struggle with that. So I would be out there, and I would be throwing very hard and very impressed with myself, and walking the ballpark at the same time. So get people on base, and nobody was hitting me, and I wasn't getting anybody out. So I would be out there struggling, and I would hear from the dugout, just throw strikes. Like, what do you think I'm trying to do? And part of that message there is that, you know, people, when they have a service issue or a concern, generally they know what it is, right? So the least helpful thing that we can do is just point that out to them. We want to acknowledge it and then help them solve whatever challenge they may have or whatever thing they need to get done. So more helpful to me would have been, hey, you need to drop and drag more, or you need to follow through more, not just throw strikes, right? So it's taking it that one step from acknowledging what the issue is and then to come up with a solution and follow through on that solution as well, okay? So does anybody remember the story of Sully Sullenberger? Anybody tell that story for us?
Landed the plane in the harbor.
Landed the plane in the harbor.
Yeah.
January 15th, 2009, takes off from JFK, 115 people, passengers and crew on board. Canada geese fly into the terminal. By the way, does anybody know that it's not Canadian geese? I didn't learn this until it's actually Canada geese named after Peter Canada, who studied those geese. Tidbit, okay? So Canada geese fly into the engines, and the plane goes down. Sully Sullenberger has a choice to make. He decides he is going to land the plane on the Hudson River. So they ask him afterwards, they call him a hero, and he doesn't like that description of himself. He's basically said, I'm just doing my job. And they said, well, how did you do it so well? And he goes, what I do every day after a flight is I review what I did. And I take 15 minutes to think about what I could have done better during that flight. And the way I look at it is on January 15th, 2009, I'd made a lot of deposits over the years. And then on that day, I made a really, really big withdrawal. So the point here is it's very easy to get complacent in our roles and what we do. And we need to challenge ourselves, even if it's for 10 or 15 minutes a day, just to say, how could I have made that customer experience better? How could I have done that better, if possible? And if you do, you can land a plane like that. Has anybody seen the movie? Is the movie good? Is it? Yeah, that's on my list of movies to see. So what I want to propose to you now is that you are all organizational athletes, okay? And you train a lot in your jobs to get good at what you do. And then at times, you're going to be able to, or asked to perform. And oftentimes, those performances are going to be with customers. And so what I want to give you as a thought to think about is to say, hey, I'm training every day. I'm not going to be complacent. I'm going to be a little bit better at what I do. And then when I have to perform, when I have that race to run, or I have that interaction with my customer, that it's going to be the best performance that I can possibly give every single time. And every single time, I'm going to get a little bit better. And if you do that, you will end up ripped like these women. So I want to transition a little bit here. So I mentioned my daughter Maddie. So that's her both on the left and on the right there. So this is her in 5th grade, and that's her in she's a sophomore now in high school. So basketball is her passion. She chose it from a very young age. We travel, and talked to Coralie about this, we travel all over New England and this past summer the country to follow her on her basketball stuff. That's her dream and passion, what she wants to do. But part of it is she's not the most natural athlete in the world. You know, some people are just gifted. Maddie's one of those kids that has to work at it. But she's worked at it really hard because she puts the time in every day on this. So what I want to get across to you on this piece is just be committed to getting a little bit better every day at creating a good customer experience. Just a little bit. And if you do that, you're going to find that actions are going to go better as well. Okay? And you know, she had a big game yesterday, and she goes to school in New Hampshire, and thankfully they live stream her game, so I got to watch it because I was up here. And sometimes we fail. And so she missed the game-winning shot yesterday, and they lost. So there was a distraught daughter on the phone last night, but that's part of the learning experience as well, you know, getting a little bit better every time. So what I want to do now, and I want to take a few minutes to do this, is what I'd like to do is maybe in your groups there at your tables, if you wouldn't mind collaborating a little bit. And then I want you to define what an excellent customer experience at the city looks like. So brainstorm what it is that someone wants when they enter City Hall offices here, or if they're out with somebody in the field, whether it's police, fire, public works. What does that experience look like? How should it feel? What do we want it to be? What's the vision that we want this experience to look like? Okay? So we're going to take a few minutes to do this, probably 10 minutes, because I really want you to think about words you would like to come out with to describe that experience. What does it look like? What does it feel like? Okay? Is that clear for everybody? Okay, so again, work together at your table, kind of brainstorm a little bit on it. And then we'll review. Okay, let's regroup everyone, please. So can I ask if anybody from one of your groups might just share a couple of thoughts on what you guys came up with, and then others in the group can maybe fill in. I just want to hear the different things that you guys were thinking about. So who wants to start?
Andrew and Paul.
Well, one is the fact that when a customer comes in, if you keep directing him to the right person, eventually that person is explaining over and over and over what it is they need. So it's important to get to the correct person initially, instead of listening to somebody and go, oh, but you need to talk to so-and-so, and then moving them on. And they get to explain their problem all over.
So
Well, it's also done with the phone, where it's like, I need to talk to so-and-so. And if you just dial that extension and hang up here, the phone will transfer the person. And so somebody's called you, explain what they need. Oh, you need to talk to Joe. Okay, you call Joe and hang up. Now the dialer is going to say, oh, Joe, you have no idea what I'm calling you for. Let me explain to you again. And so it must be a frustration at that point for a lot of customers.
thanks, Al. So I think if I can paraphrase what you're saying is when somebody either calls into the city or enters the city building, the more we can just make sure that they don't have to repeat their story and they get to the person they need to speak to immediately, the better off they were, the better experience they will have.
Yes.
Thank you. Great. Good, Paul.
I think we had a couple. One would be when folks arrive, having a very clear, a welcoming environment, but also a clarity about how to get exactly where they're going, and how to get their whatever they're looking for most efficiently.
Okay.
And then related to that, make sure as best we can that the only people who are coming in are the ones who actually want to be coming in to your sort of Amazon one-click. If their interaction, if it's something really simple, they know what they want. If they don't actually physically have to come here, and they could do it if they want to online and not have to waste half an hour of their day, that would be good. If they want to come in, then we gave them a great experience for whatever it is that they're looking. If they need if they want to have a rec program explained to them, or have a question about their permit or whatever. But if they're just trying to get something done, it might start before they even get here.
Thank you. So I think that's a brilliant point. So the idea is that if there is a transaction that can be done that doesn't require somebody coming here, we make it easy. We're giving options. Whatever experience they want to choose, they can have. So if they want to just do something online, they can do that. If they want to come in here, they can do that. But whatever experience they have, it's going to be a good one. That fair to say? Thank you. That's awesome. What else do we have? There were more groups than two, as I recall.
Well, one was from our group was just make sure you're pleasant to the person when they come in. Nobody wants to sit there and listen or look at a grumpy employee who's having a bad day, but they're there for something they need, not to have an unpleasant experience with an employee.
So it's everybody's job to greet and be pleasant as someone's in the
As much as they can.
right. How about anything else from your group over here?
From our group?
Yep.
We were part of Al's.
Boy, Al's just taken over. I mean, it's so like what she's saying. Yeah, please.
So we're in a unique position,
Yes.
like with our brothers and sisters in blue here,
Yes.
is that we we are expected to be a jack of all trades, which means that we have to have a very broad knowledge of the types of situations and requests that we have that come in.
Yes.
Alan Bernasini said it best. He was a well-known chief out in Phoenix, Arizona. Be nice to Mrs. Smith. Predictable is preventable. And at a fire service scene, take care of the 4 Ps, boss, 4 Ps.
4 Ps are people, pets, pictures, and pills.
I love that.
The other thing is,
Yeah.
call people back. Part of my job, 50% of my job is to be in the field every single day, interacting with clients, telling people things that they don't want to hear, much like the police do. Because there's a permitting processes, or they're building something wrong, by the way, you got to tear it down. Oh, that's a great message to send.
Right.
Hi, Mrs. Travis.
Right.
Your contractor's an idiot, and you have to tear this all down.
Why did you call me back?
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. So call people back.
Yes.
People expect. How many times do you get some? Thank you for calling me back. I'm supposed to call you back.
Right.
No, well, you're welcome, Madam Smith. Now, and the other word is, how may I help you, not can. Where it's a privilege to talk to these people, not thank you, I am Lord Purveyor of all things.
Hello, Mrs. Smith.
Be nice to Mrs. Smith.
And Mr. Smith.
Let's be fair.
And then what were the first 2 Ps that you mentioned?
People and pets.
And then we had pictures and those.
And I'll throw Chief Whipple under the bus here, but he had a wonderful saying out in the lobby about how do we convince the individuals who have to be our customers that they want to be our customers.
Which is sometimes a challenge. Well, I was thinking about you guys in the field. I mean, it is a different experience that you guys have oftentimes, right? So there's a different interaction that you have to have too, and a different skill set at times as well. Anything else that we want to add to those? Those are great thoughts. So we're ready to just do the most unbelievable customer experiences ever now, right? So I wanted to just throw some things that I was thinking about that I think are really helpful for the city. As I mentioned before, every touch point adds to a customer feeling good. So the phone is answered by a person quickly. No one really wants voicemail. They want to pick up the phone and have a live person at the end of the line. Secondly, customers are greeted warmly and with respect. There's little waiting, and if there is waiting, customers know what to expect. It was like we were talking about with Maggie about the waiting. Maybe they couldn't get it to her right away, but if at least she knew what was happening and progress was going to be made, she was going to feel a lot better about that. Answers are provided, and if they can't be at the moment, an expectation as to when they will. I don't know the answer to that right now, but I will get you the answer by Monday at 10 a.m. I mean, who's had that experience? It's the callback, right? It's like, we will call you back and we will have it by then. Setting the expectations for people will make them feel better and valued. Customers feel listened to, valued, and have their needs met. Think about it from your own experiences, the positive experiences that we shared earlier. And then promises are kept. If we say we're going to do something, we do it. I always say, like, if you can exceed expectations, even better, right? Even better, because then they're going to have that great customer experience and they're going to talk a lot about it. So part of it, I think I overheard one group saying, sometimes it's like really hard to be super polite and positive, because maybe you're not having the best day. What I always say is, like, you need to be who you are, because people will always recognize if you're not being genuine. And if you're genuine, you're a human being, and people, generally speaking, want to have a relationship with you in some way. Attitude, smile, right? Smile as much as you possibly can. Why? Because it makes people feel good, and it'll get you the outcome that you want more quickly than if you don't. I was in another conference in Vegas, and generally speaking, I'm a pretty positive person, and I do smile a lot. I try to have that mindset. And I was going to breakfast, and the guy said to me, boy, Mike, you're always smiling. And I go, well, it's better than the alternative, right? Better than the alternative. Have empathy. Put yourself in other people's shoes. If you do that, you're going to understand their position better, they're going to feel more valued, and you're more likely to have a positive outcome than not. Care about what the person is asking to do of you. Care about it. Be committed to it. Be accepting of what their position is. Maybe it's not that the fact that it's the right position from your point of view, but be accepting of it. And then the good communication. So I just want to touch on a couple topics. These are little like skill sets that we can take away from us. This idea of emotional intelligence, has everybody heard this concept before? Here's emotional intelligence. For me, I'm scanning the room right now, and I'm noticing that I do have eye contact with all of you. You're not either looking out the window or on your phone or looking at the clock, which means that I can keep going for a little bit. If I lose you, if you start looking out the window or you're talking or looking at the phone, I got to change things up to try to keep you engaged. Emotional intelligence is to be able to read situations well and act appropriately in that situation to get to the outcome that is the best in that situation. And the folks who are out in the field, you guys probably know that more than anybody in working with some of the difficult situations you have to. You really do have to have good emotional intelligence to be able to read situations well. How am I going to react in this particular situation with this particular person? So again, it gets back to this is not rocket science, it gets back to empathy, you being adaptable, being able to listen to someone, persuade them in terms of a good outcome, maintain emotional balance, which is hard at times, particularly in difficult conversations. But one of the things about this idea of emotional intelligence, it actually has a higher link to career success than IQ. So the better you can develop your emotional intelligence, and by the way, emotional intelligence is a skill that can be developed, the better chance that you can be more successful in your career and, quite frankly, your life. So emotional intelligence to be able to do that. So what is effective communication? Switching gears a little bit. Active listening. And the best way to describe that is 2 ears, 1 mouth. The more that we can listen to others to understand, the more that they will feel valued and the more that we will understand their situation. Now, there is a struggle at times. Have you ever been in that situation where the conversation is over and the other person doesn't realize it? That's where the emotional intelligence comes in a little bit, and that's when your skill set around personality and social skills comes in, where you need to know how to close that conversation out while still making that other person feel valued as well, okay? So open body language. The other thing is you want to be receptive to them. Do you know what there's some percentages in terms of how we receive information? Do you know what the percentage of information we get from someone's body language is in terms of the overall message?
It's like 7.
Yeah, it's somewhere in the neighborhood of 70%. So if I'm talking to Paul right here, and I'm telling him that I really think he's a good guy, and boy, he's, I think you're a lot of fun, Paul. Right? I know Paul's a fun guy, right? But see, let's be open. So the point is, with open body language, it gives a message that you're willing to receive what that person is telling you, okay? As opposed to closed body language, which essentially tells the other person that you're not interested in hearing the message. So practice being open as much as possible when you're dealing with someone. Oftentimes we need to clarify and summarize what someone said. So as I understand it, you didn't get your tax bill on time, and that's why you weren't able to pay it. Is that correct? And that does a couple things. One is it allows you to understand truly what the situation is so that you're on the same page. 2 is it tells the other person that you were listening, and they feel valued again. Empathy, empathy, empathy. Put yourself in their shoes. And then finally, be present. At that moment in time, in that interaction, that is all that exists in the world. And if you do that, people will realize it and feel better about the experience. Okay, let's talk just a little bit about greeting customers. How do you create a welcoming environment? That's an open question, by the way.
Don't have your back to them when they come in the door.
Great.
We'll first say good morning, good afternoon.
Eye contact.
Eye contact. Smile. How about from a building perspective?
Keep the doors unlocked.
Let people in now? Yeah, I mean, we all know, like, you've met people who have great social skills that make you feel really, really important. Get back to do what you do best and improve upon that. Use the skills that you have in making people feel good, and use those skills when interacting. Okay, so we talked about smiling, establish eye contact. Tell them your name as well. Hi, I'm Michael. How may I help you? And then we talked about this. So how can you help be of service? Let's go through these. Open question. How can you find out what people want? Right? How may I help you? And then to Al's point earlier, if they have a specific issue, don't ping pong them around, right? Get them to the spot that they need to be and explain. Oftentimes, so if Paul comes to me with a challenge that he's having, I want to take Paul, I'm going to walk him right up to Kevin's office. I'm going to say, Kevin, Paul came in today because he's dealing with this, and I wanted to introduce him to you and allow you to deal with the situation. Theoretically, that would make Paul feel pretty good that I took the time to be able to do that. It's all of our jobs. If you can't help, what should you do?
Find one you can.
And own it, right? Own it. If they have to wait, how are you going to go about it? I've clued you in on some of this stuff, so this is a repeat. This is what we call like reinforced learning.
I'd say acknowledge that they're there and give them a time frame when you would expect them to be able to help them.
Exactly, right? Set expectations for folks and then exceed expectations. My oldest daughter, Logan, who I should probably put a picture of in here because now I've focused on Maddie. She's a hostess at a restaurant in New Hampshire. And it's a very busy restaurant, and oftentimes wait times can get up to like an hour and a half. So she is dealing with difficult customers on a daily basis. And she was explaining this one customer who they quoted an hour and 15-minute wait. That's a long time to wait, but they said, okay, yep, we understand that. The customer kept coming up every 10 minutes and said, how's it going? How's it going? And so Logan had to smile and say, sir, it's still about the same time I quoted you. I quoted you an hour and 15 minutes. So she set the expectation. Sometimes it's still hard because people don't want that expectation, right? It's just, they want it to be 10 minutes, not an hour and 15 minutes. But she kept having to develop that relationship. And by the end of the day, after they had their meal, he came up to her afterwards and told her what a good experience it had been. So it is about just communicating well, having a positive outlook, and interacting well. Okay? So early before, how do we deal with some difficult behaviors? And I think our folks in police and fire can probably speak better to this than me. But one of the first things is label the behavior, not the customer, right? So rather than making it about that particular person, it's the behavior that that person is actually giving off. So let's not just point at the person. Let's think that this person's behaving in a certain way. We want to listen. Don't get defensive. That's the hardest, right? So if someone comes at you pretty hard and says, I am so unhappy, you guys did this to me, and then you want to be like, whoa, first of all, it wasn't me. Secondly, okay, fine. But what we have to do is just calm ourselves down and listen. Don't take it personally. A person is having an issue that they need to get solved, and for some reason, they are angry about it. So what do they really want? Okay, I hear what you're saying. Tell me how I can help you and make this right for you. Which oftentimes will diffuse the situation a little bit, because you're saying to them, I value what you're saying. I understand that you're in a tough spot. What would you like me to do right now that can help you? Discuss alternatives. Maybe what they want is not the option that you can provide them. But what are the alternatives that you can provide them? People like options. They don't like either being the black or the white at times, right? They want to be heard, and they want to have options that they can deal with. And then own it for what you can do, and then agree on action. And then I would just ask anybody else that wants to sort of share, what's been your experience in dealing with difficult people? Are there strategies that you've learned over the years that have made it better? My strategy is to try to stay as calm as possible, listen really well, and then ask them what I can do to help, and then do it. Yes, please.
In municipal government, one thing that we've got to remember, our customers are different than everybody else's.
Yes.
Our customers are prepaid. They have a different level of expectation when they come in to see us.
Yes.
They're the people that can say, I pay your salary.
Yes.
And if they're having difficult behavior, oftentimes they will say that.
Yes.
But that's what makes us different than the normal. Municipal government is different that way. And so if you remember that, going into a situation, that's oftentimes I found that helps me out. I get it. You expect this. You've never called the fire department in the 37 years you've lived in this town. You expect the day that you do call them, we're going to be there and we're going to provide this, the level of expectation you have. So you own that and you do it. So.
Thank you for sharing that. I agree. That's great. So last is, I want to just go thinking about it from a bigger picture. So we talked about what do we think the customer wants when they come in here. And now I want you to think about it from their eyes as it stands today, okay? What are the first things that you would notice if you were to interact with the city, okay? What has the city done to make you feel welcome? And we've talked to some about that already. Does anything make you feel uncomfortable right now? Are there things that we can do better? I love Paul's and the group's idea about what can we do to make it easier for our customers to interact with us, to have a great experience. And what can we do to feel a little bit more at ease? So I want to do this for maybe like 3 minutes. Again, this is taking it the next step. The first was through the eyes of the customer to say, what do they want when they get here? And as it stands, this exercise is, as it stands today, what do they feel, and are there anything that we can do a little bit better? Clear? Okay, so let's do that for like 3 or 4 minutes. We can do the same groups here because it was so brilliant last time. So, sharing of experiences here. Any thoughts?
Acknowledge you someone, even if you're busy, take a minute to acknowledge, let them know you're aware they're there.
Okay, so recognizing that you have work to do, right? But if someone's there, picking up your head, being present in that moment, making them feel welcome, and helping them at that time. Thank you. What else?
Set clear expectations.
Set clear expectations.
You know, as inspectors,
Yes.
oh, well, I got you here, just one more question, and there goes your whole day.
Mhm.
In the fire service, and it's like, I tell people, I'll be here at the such and such a time, unless there's a fire or other emergency that I have to respond to. I name this your appointment. That only happens about 2% of the time.
Right.
But the expectation is clear to them, is that if I'm not there, there's a pretty doggone good reason why I'm not there. And then following up and getting back to these people, making sure that you get an appointment in a reasonable amount of time to address their needs. Everybody has a clock run all the time.
Right.
Your time is valuable.
Right. So it's just, it's setting the expectation, and then when you're unable to make an appointment, it's closing the loop back again.
Yep. A
Thank you.
communication piece.
Communication, right. What else? Yes, please.
I think welcoming them into your personal space. So my office is the end of a long hallway. If somebody came through, I could meet with them in the hallway and often do if something's gonna be quick or I need to move them somewhere else. But if we're gonna have a real conversation, I bring them into my office and sit them down in a chair and they can see, hey, I'm not the mean lady that they think I am. I've got pictures of my kids.
You have kids, your family, right.
There's something that makes it a little more personal and that can often just make people happier because they feel like you're okay bringing them into your personal space and reminding them that you're also human too. And it always makes for a better experience for both sides.
Great, that's a great comment, thank you. So it is about that relationship. You're building a little relationship in there on a human level, right? Thank you. Anything else? These are great comments. Yes, please, Andrew.
We talked a little bit about barriers and lack of barriers and where the city's successful, for example, fairly convenient location where the building is, but inconvenient timing for a lot of people to come in during what's typically business hours, and then and also the glass in front of certain customer service points, and how it's not like a Verizon store where it's wide open, or
Right.
an Apple store.
Right.
Some of the things we could potentially do better.
Thank you. Yeah, I know Tom was talking about a couple of those things, and looking at security, et cetera, in terms of the welcoming. So we've got to thank you for these comments, by the way, and so we're going to close out now. And I just want to say it was my pleasure to be here today. I really appreciate the interaction and the thoughtfulness that went into this, and hopefully you've got something out of this. And as Tom mentioned, this is sort of a starting point. You want to build upon this. And to that end, on the back of your sheets, you're going to see something that says start, stop, and continue. And that start, stop, and continue is essentially, what do you need to start doing, you personally or your team or both, start doing to create a better customer experience? What do you need to stop doing that's harming you from creating a great customer experience? And then what do you continue doing? My guess is, based on our interactions today, there's going to be a lot in the continue column, which is great. But there are things that we probably all can do to improve ourselves in this regard as well. So I would offer you up to do that. And so our last thing is, I just want to show you a quick video of a customer service experience, and let's see if we can't create that here. So being nice to Mr. Smith as well. Right? That's the other piece of this, okay? So now what I'd like to do is I'd like to go out in the parking lot, and we're going to practice saying it's a boy. So that wraps it up today. So again, I really urge you to do your start, stop, continue. Keep thinking about this. Great discussion today, and really appreciate your time, okay?
Thank you.
So have a good day.
Thank you very much.